Hello everyone, a blessed Sunday to each and every one of you. We will be starting in about 5 minutes. So yeah, if you haven't had your coffee or tea, you may choose to get one. This meeting will be recorded. You can check it out on our YouTube page after the talk. And good morning, everybody. We'll be starting quite soon, in about 1 to 2 minutes. Yeah, so just ask that you hold on. Okay, it's 11:30. Let us start. First want to welcome you to joining us for this CED talk regarding an update for COVID-19. Some of you have been in these talks before, so we want to welcome you again. We know that the situation keeps changing, and we do hope that you all will be enlightened with the latest updates, and also would have the necessary information to make decisions to what to do next. So before we start, we just want to welcome you to this talk by PJEFC. Just want to also mention that we have other talks that are coming up soon. There is one for our joint ministry regarding the digital world. Why should we keep up? It will be taking place on 19 March on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. This is where we would want to train those who feel that they are lacking in technology, in terms of technological skills, and they want to learn something new, like how to use social media, Facebook. This is a talk which we hope would bless you guys, would enrich your learning. So if you have any information for this, if you require the information for this, do check out our website at pjefc.org. The information that you need is there. All right, so without further ado, let us start the talk. Elder Dr. Fong is no stranger to us, and we will just want to pass the time to him to give us an update regarding Omicron and the latest updates regarding the pandemic. Just to take note that there is a question and answer session later. You may submit your questions either via the chat if you're on YouTube or in Zoom, or you may also choose to use the Slido link that is available, and we will then answer your questions right after the presentation. So let me pass the time to Dr. Choong Fong.
Hi. Let me just mute this other one. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see the screen? Okay, welcome everybody to this latest update on COVID-19. I'm just going to cover a few areas of interest in particular. The current COVID situation. We'll talk a bit about the Omicron and the new variants. I also mentioned a bit about the long COVID, adults and in children, vaccination, about booster, and also a very hot topic is vaccination in children. And then to conclude, how to move on from this pandemic and what it means for all of us practically. So what is the current COVID situation? Now, if you look at the data which I took from 4th of March, which is 2 days ago, you can see that the cases in Malaysia has been going up quite rapidly. In fact, at a higher rate compared to Delta. So most of us would have known someone in the family or friends who have had COVID or know of someone who have COVID. So we are in the midst of this Omicron wave at the moment. Now, if you then look at the rate of tests positive, you can see also when things are in rather good control, the test positive rate normally is less than 3%. But if you look at today's test positive rate is in the region of the teens, on the 2nd of March is on 13.7%. Now, a higher test positive rate just means that there are much more cases in the community than we are able to detect. So the higher the test positive rate means that there are more people that we are not picking up. And therefore the daily numbers reported of 30 over 1,000 is probably a gross underestimation. Now, if you look at the cases by transmission in Malaysia, you can see that the sporadic cases are the ones that predominate. Okay, so for the 4th of March, you can see that the majority is sporadic. Sporadic just means that it's just happened. It's not part of a known cluster. So infections are just being picked up all over the place. Now, this means that the virus is already being circulating randomly and in a large number within the community. So it's no longer cluster-based. Okay, so this is the current situation in Malaysia. But what about our current vaccination rate? So I'm sure a lot of you are also keeping eye on this. We're doing extremely well. 83% of the total Malaysian population has been vaccinated. If you then look at the adults above 18, we are approaching 99%. Okay, so very, very high vaccination rate. And if we then look at the adolescents, we are now also approaching about 93%, although we can still do better because there's still about 7% of children between 12 to 17 that's not vaccinated. Now, we also just started on vaccinating children between 5 to 11 years old, and we have done more than a quarter by now. So these are the current numbers. Now, if you then look at the situation within the hospital, because one of the main concerns about COVID pandemic is about the severe diseases. We're not so worried about how many people get infected, but rather what is the strain, what is the occupation of our health facilities like? Can we cope with these severe diseases? And it's very obvious if you compare the situation when we had the Delta wave sometime in July to September last year, compared to now, the numbers of COVID patients in ICU is actually way lower. Okay, you're talking about less than a quarter of when compared to the peak during the 9th of August last year. For example, it's almost 1,600 cases, whereas now we don't even approach 400 cases. So obviously, although the numbers of people affected is high, the people who have severe disease who need ICU care is low. Now, if you look at the hospital admission, obviously it's catching up because more and more people are affected. Now, although the hospital numbers here is high and approaching that of during the Delta wave, the people who are admitted are not as serious or as seriously ill compared during the Delta wave. Okay, but because the hospital beds are available, and therefore even fairly mild disease patients are also being admitted. Now, if you then look at the death rate, okay, this is where you can also see a huge difference. Now, during the Delta wave period in 7th of August here, the daily reported death is 336. Okay, the 334, the 7-day average is 336. Now, if you compare that to just this week, the death rate is slightly more than 10% compared to those at the peak in August. So although the numbers of cases is higher than during Delta wave, but the number of daily deaths is far lower. Okay, now all this I have to bear in mind. We'll discuss about this later. Yeah, and also we look at the ventilated ones, and we see the similar picture. At its height, the active ventilation approaches 1,000 people for the whole of Malaysia. And if you look at today, it's about 1/5 who are actively ventilated due to COVID. So you can see that the severity of this current wave as a stress or load to the hospital and the health facility is much, much lower, in the region of about 20 to 30% compared to during the Delta wave. Now, so what will happen in the next few weeks and months ahead? So I'm just going to give you some projection. Now, this is based on United Kingdom. Now, United Kingdom has a fairly similar vaccination rate compared to Malaysia. Okay, they experience their waves differently from Malaysia. So there's United Kingdom, they have the initial wave here. Initial wave here is not really recorded because they're not really taking the cases at that time. But when they have the second wave, then the Delta wave, and then the Omicron wave, you can see this is the respective time. Now, if you look at the deaths in United Kingdom, it's worse during this period. And when they hit Delta, it's actually, although a lot of people are being affected, but not a lot of people ended up dying during the Delta wave. And part of this is due to, in fact, a big part of it is due to vaccination. And when you look at the Omicron, although the numbers is way higher than the Delta or the Alpha wave in United Kingdom, way higher, many times higher, but the amount of people who die from it is way lower compared to the Alpha wave initially. Now, if you compare that to Italy, which is fairly similar to the United Kingdom and the rest of Europe, you can see very similar trends. So Omicron wave, very high peak, a lot of new cases, but the effect in terms of death here is low compared to the initial phases of the previous waves that we experienced. So this gives us a sense that Omicron, this current wave, is not affecting the health of people or causing as much death as before. And there are reasons for that. So I will come to that later. Yeah? So just bear this in mind. So now if you look at the experience of Italy and the United Kingdom, and also of the other countries in Europe, as well as United States, Canada, Australia, it shows a very similar picture in that the Omicron wave spiked very quickly, and it will go away fairly quickly, far quicker than the initial other waves that we experienced. And then the numbers will go down very, very soon. In most countries experience between 6 to 8 weeks of an Omicron wave, and the Omicron wave will then subside. Now, so if you then look at Malaysia, comparing Malaysia with United Kingdom, you can see that our wave is slightly delayed. So when Delta was happening in UK, in sort of like June, July period, we're only getting ours in August, September. So it'll be delayed by about 2 months. And similarly, in the Omicron wave, it's the same thing. So we're delayed by about 1.5 to 2 months. So now we are having the Omicron wave, which I hope will peak fairly shortly, and then it will subside again. Now you can see our peak is less tall compared to United Kingdom, but broader generally because of SOPs that is in place. So when you have SOPs, you lower down the peak, but at the same time, you also draw out the wave a bit longer, because the speed at which people get infected is a bit slower. So this is the current situation. Now, who are the people at risk during this Omicron wave? Okay. Now, if you look at the data for COVID, okay, statistically, for every 100 reported cases, okay, 1 person might die. Okay. But of course, the actual number will be less than that, because the number of reported cases is often under-reporting. Now, more males suffer from it compared to female. Probably males are less healthy. And also, if you look at the ages, you can see that the older age group is more susceptible. Having said that, in Malaysia, you can see that even the relatively younger people between 18 to 39, 10% of our fatalities actually involve this younger age group. And the vast majority, about 80%, have underlying health conditions, okay? But even healthy people with that underlying health condition can also be affected. So you have to bear in mind that while the evidence seems to show that if you're young and you have no underlying health conditions, you are actually fairly safe. But if you're unvaccinated, you're not protected, you have no good immunity, COVID can still be devastating in terms of in your health, causing you trouble, and also in worst case scenario, causing death. So Omicron variant, okay, so the whole world is now infected by Omicron, which is super infectious. Okay, it's first designated as a variant of concern by WHO on the 26th of November when it was first sequenced and discovered in South Africa. The technical designation is BA 1.1.529, yeah, which is just helping us to denote this particular variant. It is far more transmissible, but it also presents with different symptoms, which is quite interesting. Now, remember the first wave of COVID, a lot of people lose their sense of taste and smell. And that is very common with Delta and also the pre-Delta version. But if you look at Omicron, they have different set of symptoms. Now, sneezing is common, whereas Delta is not so common. Persistent coughing is not a common feature of Omicron, okay? And then loss of smell is very rare. In fact, of all the people that have infection recently by COVID, among my friends and so on, loss of smell is not featured much at all, okay? And shortness of breath, again, is not a feature in Omicron. Sore throat is common, okay, as in Delta. So these are some of the differences between Omicron and Delta in terms of the symptoms. Okay, so by just experiencing symptoms, maybe you can tell whether you have Omicron and Delta. And by far, the vast majority is Omicron currently in Malaysia. Now, is Omicron variant less dangerous? It seems to be so. Now, if you look at the data from the United States, during the height of the Delta wave, the daily average reported cases is about 164,000. During the recent Omicron wave, the average reported daily cases is 5 times more at 800,000. Okay, but despite 5 times more common in terms of reported cases, the average hospital admission is only 1.8 times. That means indicating that despite it being 5 times more, and we were expected to be 5 times as many patients if Omicron is the same as Delta, but it's not. It's only 1.8 times higher. Okay, so there is a difference in these two waves, but this difference comes with a caveat. Okay, so let's look at this now. Is a milder, the Omicron causing less cases due to it being mild, or is it due to the fact that the community is now vaccinated and because of previous infection also immune due to natural immunity? Okay, I repeat, yeah. So is it due to the Omicron being less infective, less dangerous, the virus itself being less dangerous, or is it due to the fact that the community that this Omicron comes is a community that is already well immunized, either through vaccination or through previous infection? Okay, so it could be either or it could be both. Now, so scientists have been looking into this, and we reckon it's both. In other words, Omicron is less pathogenic. Pathogenic is just a fancy term of being less dangerous, but equally because we are more immunized as a population. Okay. Now, if we are not immunized, Omicron may not be as safe, or as it's not so safe to have if you're not immunized. In other words, the virus itself, although it's less dangerous, is still dangerous, because part of the danger of the virus has been removed by the fact that the community is immunized. But if you're not immunized, your danger is still high, not as high as Delta, we think, but it's still high. Okay, so the other thing about Omicron is that it's so transmissible. It's so transmissible compared to Delta. Therefore, we see the peak going up very, very fast. So if you're not vaccinated or you're under-vaccinated, Omicron is still dangerous, not as dangerous as Delta, but it's still dangerous and cause problem. Now, is vaccine therefore necessary in the Omicron variant? And it is. Now, a lot of people tend to think that, oh, Omicron doesn't seem so safe. Therefore, if I have not been vaccinated or have not had my booster, therefore, I don't have to have it because it's not dangerous, which is not quite true. Now, when we look at the vaccine effectiveness against the Omicron variant, the vaccines are effective, but its effectiveness has been reduced. Okay, for those people who have had two doses, your protection over time, you will, by the time you get into 4 to 6 months, 4 months onwards, your protection is only about 30 to 40%, as compared to in excess of 90% if you had your vaccination against earlier against Delta. And the vaccine still offers 70% protection against hospitalization, which is a lot, but it's not as high as we'd like it to be. And this is due to the fact that the vaccine with time loses its effectiveness in conferring immunity. In other words, there's waning immunity. Now, if you look at this study, they look at the comparing Delta. So how effective is the Pfizer vaccine, the second dose, if you have 2 doses of Pfizer, against Delta and against Omicron. So you can see the Delta one here is in the dark square. You can see that it reduces with time to about 60+%. By the time you reach about 25 weeks, which is about 6 months. And then if you do a booster, it goes back up again. Now, if you look at Omicron, the effectiveness actually reduced down to 30+% within about 3 months, 3 months plus. And it stays at 30+% until you get boosted, in which case it go back to 70+%, but not as high as Delta. Okay, so therefore booster actually makes a difference in protecting the person from Omicron. It reduces hospitalization, it reduces severe disease, and it reduces death. Okay, so it's important to get your booster, even though Omicron seems to be less dangerous than Delta. It is still dangerous, and therefore booster is still required. Now, is there any other variant of concern? A lot of people are talking about this BA.2. Yeah, this is a subtype of the Omicron. Now, although it's a variant of the Omicron, it's still lumped under the Omicron and classified together. Now, it seems to be more transmissible, and in some animal model study in Japan show that it's more severe. But real life data in UK, in Denmark, in South Africa, whereby there is a high level of previous infection and vaccination, the BA.2, the subvariant BA2, is not shown to have increased severity compared to BA1. And therefore, currently, BA1 and BA2 is still lumped together as the Omicron subvariant. How about long COVID? So that's another interesting things about, okay, we can survive COVID, but what about the long-term effects of COVID? Now, this is a very, very busy thing. Yeah? You don't have to read all of these things, but this slide is just to show you that long COVID can cause a lot of problems. Now, this is actually a poster being distributed to GPs, okay, to doctors actually. It's published in the BMJ as a visual summary of all the challenges that can happen for patients with long COVID. Okay, and what is long COVID? Now, long COVID is defined by the WHO as the post-COVID condition that occurs in the individual with a confirmed infection, and usually 3 months after the onset, okay, with symptoms that last for at least 2 months. They cannot be explained by anything else, okay? So the common symptoms are fatigue, shortness of breath, and so on, the whole long list, okay? And it may persist, it may come and go, but it keep persisting. Such is this a problem that in UK, the GPs are on the lookout for it. And these are all the management pathways that the GPs in UK will go through if someone is detected with long COVID. And the complication, the fact that this slide is so complicated shows that this long COVID can be potentially a big problem. Okay. Now, if you look at the study that's done, how often it is now, after 7 months post-infection, 20% still have severe and very severe disease. Now, having said that, this study is done earlier before the Omicron wave. So this is more reflective of the earlier variants, yeah, like Delta and Alpha. Now, 35 have moderate symptoms. That means 1/3 of people have some form of symptoms, even 7 months after the infection. And also in this study, it shows that if you have vaccination, you are protected, more protected. It doesn't take it all together, but the chances of you having long COVID is much reduced. Okay, but we also see that with Omicron, because the vaccination rate is very high, for example, in Malaysia, there are much less symptoms, and we hope that long COVID is also less of a problem with the current Omicron wave. But nevertheless, we have to bear in mind that long COVID is a real thing, and it can affect you. Even if you survive COVID, you may have this more longer lasting effect for a long time to come, which is not fun and not good. Now, does long COVID affect children? Yes, it does. Okay, so this study, again, this is not done on Omicron, this is done on the earlier wave of infection. 15 weeks after COVID infection, 14% of young people, 14%, 1 in 7 with COVID had symptoms of long COVID. And 7% have more than 5 symptoms that was listed. And the common ones are headaches, unusual tiredness, and so on. So it also affects children. Now, so in mind of this, that COVID, although a lot of people are getting COVID, we understand it far more. Although the Omicron variant seems to be less dangerous, less people are getting ill, COVID vaccination remains important. So I'm just going to talk about this a little bit. Now, a lot of people compare the vaccine between Sinovac, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca, which is the one that we get in Malaysia. And data, this is from Malaysia. This is actually published in the Lancet. Lancet is one of the main medical journals in the UK by the Ministry of Health Malaysia. And if you compare these 3 types of vaccine, if you're partially vaccinated with Sinovac, and you have comorbidities. Comorbidities means that you have other health conditions. Okay, you are about 30 to 40% higher risk compared to if you're vaccinated by Pfizer. But if you're vaccinated by AstraZeneca, you seem to have the lower risk here. This is partial vaccination. But if you compare to full vaccination, if you're using Sinovac, you're still 3 times more likely to die compared to if you're vaccinated with Pfizer. This is full vaccination, 2 doses. Okay, and these are no more comorbidity. That means these people have these are with comorbidities, people with health condition. And if you're vaccinated, AstraZeneca seems to offer the best protection in the experience of Malaysia. Okay, so you can see that of the vaccines, the 2 main ones, Sinovac and Pfizer, that we use. AstraZeneca we use quite a lot also, although it's not discontinued. Pfizer offers better protection compared to Sinovac. Should I take the booster dose? Okay, the data in Malaysia shows conclusively that we should, and booster dose reduces category 3 COVID across all age groups. So if you look at this red bar, which is no vaccination, and then the orange bar, which is complete vaccination, only 2 doses, and then the blue bar, which is complete vaccination with booster dose. Okay, you can see that the columns, the blue column is far less compared to the red and the orange columns. Okay, indicating that the booster dose reduce the category 3 COVID across all age groups. If you look at category 4 and 5, the similar picture emerges that booster dose confer highly significant protection against the category 4 and 5, which is the severe COVID cases. Okay, it highly protects. There's no question about this. The data is obvious. It's not in dispute anymore. It is not just the experience of Malaysia. It is worldwide. Every single country that look into their data will come to the same conclusion. Every single country, including Malaysia. So you can see that this is for not for category 3, 4, and 5. This is for mortality. That means dying. Again, you can see that if you are boosted, your mortality across the age group is much less compared to if you're not vaccinated or you're only vaccinated by 2 doses and not boosted. So again, I want to emphasize the data is out there. The data is collected based on all the cases in Malaysia, and it is obvious that booster dose protects. So therefore, take your booster dose. Because booster dose reduces the risk of death by 40 to 70 times compared to the unvaccinated. And this is a lot. 40 to 70 times is a lot. That means it reduces your risk by almost between 95 to 98%. Okay, and that's a lot. And compared to 2 doses, it protects between 3 to 5 times, which is still a lot, which is basically a risk reduction by many times. So take-home message, one take-home message, if you're not already boosted, please get boosted. Now, if you look at Malaysia, we still have 1/3 of people who can receive booster dose that haven't got it. So if this is the data from the same one from 4th of March, yeah? Among the adults 18 years old, which means they are all eligible for booster. All adults are eligible for booster now. Okay, unlike the adolescents, which they still have to wait, but adults are eligible now. 63.5% have already received their booster, but 1/3, slightly more than 1/3, still have yet to receive their boosters. So if you are still holding back, holding on, there's no reason to do so because the data for booster protection is obvious. It is definite. And you must take your booster because it protects you far more than if you don't. Okay. Now, which booster should I take if I previously had Sinovac? This is one of the questions that's asked quite often. For Pfizer, you get Pfizer normally. For Sinovac recipients, you can actually choose between Sinovac or Pfizer because in Malaysia, you're allowed to choose either. Now, if you look at the data here, comparing Sinovac 2 dose versus the reference point, which is Pfizer 2 doses, if you have Sinovac 2 doses, you have a 76% higher risk of getting COVID infection. Okay, that means Sinovac doesn't protect. It protects, it doesn't protect as well as Pfizer. But if you boost yourself, either with a Sinovac or with a Pfizer, that means you have 2 doses of Sinovac, you boost yourself with an additional Sinovac or additional Pfizer, you would lower your risk by 92% to 94%, about the same. Okay, so in other words, you should boost. Okay, it doesn't matter if you want to choose Sinovac or Pfizer, Pfizer is slightly better, but you should take your booster dose because it reduces your risk of infection by more than 90%. Yeah, please take your booster dose. I know I've repeated this many times, but please take your booster dose. Have your jab. Okay, it's important, very important. And if you are a Sinovac recipient and you're still holding out, it's even more important for you to do so right now. So how about COVID vaccination in children? Now, why vaccinate children against COVID? I know this is a very difficult topic, emotive, and a lot of parents find decision-making in this area very, very difficult. And I can understand it. I can understand the anxiety and the fear involved in vaccinating children with a vaccine that seems to have a short record, okay? But why vaccinate? So all the health authorities of the world have come up to say that we should vaccinate children. And the reasons given by all of them are this. Children can still get ill with COVID. As you can see in the earlier slides I've shown you, children can still get ill with COVID. They can still get long COVID. And they can be infected and they can transmit COVID to others, particularly if you have elderlies at home or who have people at home who are not vaccinated for whatever reason or with comorbidities. Children can transmit COVID to others. Okay, they can also get long COVID with the longest term side effects. Now, they also can get this very quite serious condition called Multi-Inflammatory Syndrome in children caused by COVID. Although it's rare, but it can be serious and can have long-term effects that affect the heart, lungs, kidneys, skin, eyes, and so on. Having said that, because children are resilient, most of them do recover from it. So if you have the option of immunizing your children against COVID, you should do so. Okay, because vaccine protects them from severe COVID and it reduces the risk of COVID reinfection. Okay, and both Pfizer and Sinovac as of 2 days ago, are approved for use in children. So if you can take Pfizer, you're going to take Pfizer. But if you're worried about mRNA vaccine for whatever reason, you can take Sinovac in Malaysia because both of them are available. Okay. Now, let's come to this topic of COVID pandemic to endemic. And what does that mean? Yeah. COVID-19, I believe, and a lot of people also can see signs of it being so, is becoming endemic. Okay, what does this mean? Now, endemic means that a disease has a constant presence in the population. It means the disease is already constantly there. You would not be able to get rid of the condition because the virus will not go away. It will still jump from one person to another, to another, to another. Sometimes you'll have an outbreak, and sometimes it will still be in the background, much like flu, much like dengue. Okay, it will continue to circulate. And eventually, doesn't matter who you are, all of us will meet this virus. And we will meet this virus, some of us will develop infection. And the severity of the infection will depend on your immunity. Okay? So the key point is, you want to have enough immunity when you encounter the COVID virus. Okay? So how do we do that? Okay? How to get the immunity? First of all, vaccinate. You have to reduce your risk. Get vaccinated for yourself, get your booster dose. Okay. We also know that the severity of COVID is related to the viral dose. That means how much virus get into your body in one go. And therefore, you want to avoid large gathering with poor SOPs at the moment. Okay. You have to wear masks, observe SOP for the time being. But on the other hand, we also want to transit slowly to an endemic phase. Okay. Because as COVID, especially Omicron, affect more and more people, and as more and more people are also vaccinated and boosted, then more and more people in the community, in the population, develop immunity to it. Therefore, you only have mild diseases and more people will get it. Eventually, the majority of people will get it. And once that happens, the underlying immunity of the population becomes strong enough, and therefore, normal life can resume again. Okay? And this is already happening. Therefore, this withdrawal of SOPs. Yeah, slowly and gradually. Don't underestimate the risk, but don't overestimate it either. Okay, we'll open our economies. Soon, border will open because we cannot forever live under lockdown because the mental health burden on adults and children is actually quite significant. Yeah, children is losing time in school and social development and so on. And we need to move on to normality. So this transition from being careful, reducing risk, and to normal life is something that is quite difficult to do. Yeah, because all this while we've been told, careful, and then suddenly now, get on with normal life. So this transition can be quite difficult. And all of us are different in where we are. So with high vaccination rate and high natural immunity from infection from Omicron, we are actually likely not far away from an endemic situation for COVID. Okay, so what are we doing as a church? Okay, and what should we do as a community? Okay, to transit from pandemic to endemic. So for this, we have restarted physical meeting, as we all know. Okay, we have started Sunday services for all congregations. We have started Sunday school, impacts, UG, young adult, CGs. Some CGs have started as well, prayer meetings and so on, and also open the well. So all these have started. And we want to encourage those who are fully vaccinated and boosted, or if you are previously infected, okay, and then you are fully recovered, and you belong to low-risk group, we would want to encourage you to come, okay, to try to come and following SOP still at the moment, and be part of this community again, to slowly transit, to pivot into normality, okay? And we want to maintain physical meetings, and we want to move towards this normality. Now, we understand people are different at different stages because your circumstances are different. For example, if you have young children who are unvaccinated, you may be more careful, or you have elderly parents who are with other conditions or illness, you may want to be more careful. But if you are fully vaccinated, boosted, all your family in your bubble is fully vaccinated and boosted and vaccinated, then it's actually getting safer, okay, to then move into normality. Okay. Now, I know some of you are using the excuse of the pandemic to stay at home. Okay, so there are legitimate reasons for that, but there are also illegitimate reasons. Okay, because some of you stay at home not because it's pandemic, you don't want to go to a physical meeting in church, but rather you just don't want to wake up so early, lah. Okay, so you just have to think about it, and we have to navigate through these challenges. Okay, but we want to slowly transit into normality. Okay, carefully looking at the data, but certainly it looks like we can slowly move to that. Okay. Now, to move to that, of course, people do self-testing and so on, right? Okay, and some people are confused about test kits, and I get this question quite a lot. What do I do with it? Now, for test kits, there are many on the market. Okay, so only buy the ones that are approved by the Medical Device Authority of Ministry of Health Malaysia. Okay, so you can actually go to the website. You just type MDA, Medical Device Authority of Malaysia, MDA, and then you can go into the website, and then they will give you a whole long list of the approved home test kits. Now, how is it approved? These are approved, of course, through some testing done by the ministry, and they know that, okay, this works, this have met the quality requirement, and therefore it's approved. Yeah, so you can look at the list. I'll just show you a quick show. Of course, this is a lot longer. I just screenshot this based on 3rd of March. And to date, there are 124 medical devices approved. Okay, so the ones that you buy from, let's say, the pharmacy in Malaysia will almost certainly be approved. The ones you buy online, you have to be a bit more careful. Yeah, because we do not know the source of where they come from. So you just have to take a bit more care if you do buy online. Buy for reputable sources. Now, for COVID home test kits, just a few things to mention. Now, if you test negative, that means I want to go for a party, okay, I do a self-test, I swab my nose. The negative test, you say, oh yeah, negative, let's go, could be a false negative. False negative means that you are actually positive, but actually the test says you're negative, so the test is wrong. Now, normally, they give you a figure there saying that how sensitive is the test. And a lot of the test says it's 90% sensitive. That means if a test negative, you are quite confident that it's negative. But actually in real life, it's not really true, because testing depends on how well you test. Okay, first of all, whether you spit enough sputum into the test bowl, whether you swab deep enough into your nose, whether you do the whole process properly enough. And secondly, it depends on your viral load. Let's say you're at the initial stage of your infection. That means the virus is not being shed. Shed means being sort of like produced by your body, but you're infected already. You will still test negative. Okay, and therefore the more accurate sensitivity is actually 50 to 80% and not 90% as advertised. So you just have to bear this in mind. Okay, why do I say that? Because if you have symptoms, let's say you have sore throat, you have a bit of fever, you're a bit lethargic, but at the same time, you do not want to disappoint your friends or your family because you have a gathering. You go and swab. Oh, it's negative. Yeah, go. I would caution, don't go. Okay, because of this false negative issue. All right. Now, if you test positive, okay, if you test and you're positive, chances are you are really positive. Okay, so when you test positive, don't say that, oh, I test positive. Let me test again. Maybe the test positive is false. You test again, oh, it's negative. Yeah, I believe the negative one. I don't believe the positive one. Now, that's the wrong thing to do, because false positive is very rare. If you test positive, that means if the test says you're positive, it's almost certainly you're positive. You don't have to do retest again. Okay. If you do retest, you get negative and you believe the negative test, you probably make a wrong decision. All right. So just to bear this in mind, if you test positive, stay at home. Don't do retest because the positive test is probably true and accurate. If you test negative, you have symptoms, you have to be careful. Don't believe the negative test because its chances are is a false negative. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so good. Now, so of course there are different ways of testing: nasal swab, saliva, but this is for screening purposes. So therefore, if you are test positive, please isolate yourself, and it's best done 3 to 4 days after exposure. And most people test it too early. Let's say you found someone at home or at work, they are positive. They are positive. Sorry, they are walking in. They are positive. You have subset isolate. Now, for the best result, you have to test 3 to 4 days after exposure. Okay, 3 to 4 days after exposure. But most people test a bit too early, and therefore they test negative, whereas they are already positive. And finally, so if you want to know what to do if you test positive or you have close contact, there is this infographic that's floating around, which is very good. This is effective 1st of March 2022. So it tells you positive case, your self-isolation, you should isolate yourself, whether you have received booster, fully vaccinated or not vaccinated, 7 days, and 10 days if you are incompletely or have no vaccination. If you have close contact and you have received booster, if you're asymptomatic, there's no quarantine involved, but you have to self-test. If you're symptomatic, you have to quarantine for 5 days and you have to self-test. If you're fully vaccinated, you have to quarantine for 5 days, regardless whether you have symptoms or not. Okay? And if you're complete vaccinated or no vaccination, you have to quarantine for 7 days. So these are the guidelines that's given by the MOH, and it will be one that I think it will be good for us to follow. As more and more people are getting infected in the community, and eventually all of us will also get infected. So it would be good that we familiarize ourselves with what we should do when we do get it. So that's all I want to talk today. I know it's very fast, there's a lot of information, but I want to leave some time for people to also ask questions. So I'll pass this time to the audience and also Pastor Yu Yong as he chair the question session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. All right, so as mentioned earlier, if you have any questions for the speaker, you may either choose to write it out on the chat and one of our online hosts will copy paste it into Slido, or you may, we want to encourage you to also just write the questions on the Slido. The link is available on the chat. So I'll give you guys a short time just to write your questions. But before that, just want to just mention a few things. This talk is brought to you by PJEFC. We have a few things that are coming up. We have helping our children through important milestones in life. One of the many questions from this COVID talk is how do we take care of our children? Should we get them vaccinated? Should we send them to school? And yeah, there are also many other things when it comes to helping our children. So if you have interested in growing as a parent, please do consider this. This is brought to you by our PJAFC Family Life Ministry. You may scan the QR code or contact Reverend Alexa or Brother Lee soon. Another thing that we are doing in this season, because we are observing the season of Lent, is that we are having a food bank. We want to call out for a restock. This will be open on the 19th and 26th of March on Saturday. On the 19th of March, it'll be from 4 to 6 p.m. and 5 to 6 p.m. If you need to know the items that we need, please head on to our website. There is a list of items there if you want to give to charity. All right. So now let's move on to the question and answers. Give me a second as I open the Slido.
Okay, yeah, I can see some questions coming in already. Yeah, so, okay, so I'll just go through this. I'll just go through the upvoted ones. They are towards the top. Yeah, shall I do that, Pastor Yu?
Yes.
Okay, so there's one question about, I heard that if we develop antibodies after contracting COVID-19, we are better protected after contracting COVID-19. If so, what is the duration? Now, I think the idea to contract COVID in order to be to get immunity from COVID, this doesn't make sense. The whole idea is not to get COVID, but protected from COVID itself, right? So it doesn't make sense to contract COVID in order to be protected from COVID. Now, if you're already contracted COVID, of course, it's good because your body will develop antibodies and therefore will protect you better from reinfection by COVID, although that happens, yeah, reinfection by COVID, or reduce your risk of being infected by other COVID variant in the future. Okay, so if you're already infected, good, you have some vaccine antibodies in your body, it will last. The duration is actually very variable because it depends on how severe you're infected. If you're lightly infected, your antibody levels won't last very long time. In fact, it lasts less than a lot of vaccines. But if you're very severely infected, studies seem to show that then you have better protection, but then you are severely infected to start with all the problems with that. So I don't think you want to go get infected so that you are protected, because that doesn't make sense, okay? If you are infected because you're infected, then you are protected for some time being. Now, even then, you should still take vaccine at some point later in life because your immunity from natural infection will also wane, much like the immunity from vaccination, okay? Now, second question is about the church gathering. If there's a possibility, should we suspend the church service next week? We don't do that. All of us are mask wearing during church service. So even if there's a positive case among us, it will still be considered casual contact. And therefore, as casual contact, there is no need to do any different, okay, except to just know that you have casual contact. And therefore, if you develop symptoms in the next few days, then of course, self-test, and be careful. At the moment, if you have your casual contact, you're vaccinated, you're boosted vaccinated, especially, then there's no quarantine required. Now, recently, there's a 13-year-old teen that died, I think in Johor, 18 days after receiving the first vaccine dose, okay? Will this be relating to the vaccine? Now, we don't know why the teen died, okay? And I know it's in the social media, it's highlighted by Charles Santiago, the MP for Klang. We don't know. So this teenager died 18 days after receiving the first dose of vaccine. Now, whether he died as a result of the vaccine, we don't know yet, okay? Now, the MOH, as far as I know, is doing the autopsy on him, doing the test investigation on him to find out. But just because someone died 18 days later after vaccination doesn't mean that the vaccine caused it, okay? Now, if I have a plate of char kway teow today and I then died 7 days later, it doesn't mean that the char kway teow caused it. You understand what I mean? So this causal, that means the vaccine caused the death, is not the conclusion we can make at this moment. So I think we have to be careful about this. In any case, this is one case out of the millions of children who have been vaccinated worldwide. Okay. So what should I do if I fully recover? What should I do to fully recover if I'm COVID positive? Now, most people with the Omicron variant, thankfully, have very mild disease, and therefore they recover quite quickly, 2 to 3 days, 5 days, and then they are off their symptoms. However, some people do have more severe COVID, so 3, 4, and 5. Now, if you are 3, 4, and 5, naturally, you would have been in the hospital. Naturally, the hospital, the doctors would have then give you follow-up and you should see the doctor. Now, if you have been staying at home, not going to the hospital, and you have been more severely affected by this, I would suggest that you should see a doctor, okay, a doctor that you trust. And even if you are no longer infective, if you have any side effects from the COVID, due to long COVID, you should see a doctor and they will be able to help you in your recovery. Okay, so it's best to see a doctor. Please explain why children below 5 do not need vaccination. Now, the question is not that do not need, the question is that the vaccine has not been trialed under children under 5 years old. Okay, it has not been given or trialed below 5 years old. And I think the trials will take place, but it's harder to conduct these trials because the consent is harder to obtain. Because in order to jab a child with vaccine under a clinical trial, you need consent and you need parents who are willing for under 5-year-old to be jabbed in this test, in this clinical trial. And it's hard to do such trials. Okay, so it's not that we don't want to vaccinate children under 5, but it's because the trial to do so is difficult. And without the trial, then the suppliers of vaccine also cannot then get the approval to have it jabbed. So that is the issue. Okay? It's an issue of regulation and how this whole very stringent regulatory process is taking place worldwide. Okay, I believe it will still take place, but it will take time. Okay, what is the effect of sports post-COVID infecting? Post-COVID infection, I think. If you fully recover, you can go back to sports. But if you have long COVID, or if you, let's say, have got shortness of breath after the COVID, you have to be a bit careful. Okay, don't do vigorous sports straight away because that may stress your lungs and your hearts, and that may not be good for you. Okay, particularly if you're older. So you have to be a bit more careful in doing so. Okay, so I would say that take things easy. If you have COVID, you can go back to sports, by all means exercise, but don't overstress yourself initially. Now, when will we be free from wearing masks? Oh, I hope it's today. I hope it's soon. I think if you go to, I just came back from Vancouver, visiting Hera's in-laws. People are still wearing masks indoors, but a lot of outdoor activities no longer masked. If you travel to the UK today or to Europe today, almost nobody is wearing masks. I met a patient of mine from Algeria. She went back home in July, and she told me that everyone in Algeria had COVID because all her friends from her village, from her town, from all her friends there, everybody had it. Okay, and nobody is wearing masks today in Algeria. Okay, so we don't hear from Algeria very much, but that's what she just told me yesterday. So we will be free from masks, but we will have to have enough immunity in the community, whereby enough people are vaccinated and infected, have high enough immunity within our community, then we'll be free from it. And I think it may be sooner than we hope. Hopefully, yeah. Okay, does the Omicron variant also cause a multi-inflammatory system disorder in children? Okay, it does. The data is not so robust, not so obvious compared to the Delta variant, because of course Omicron is later, but it still does, although the rate is rare. Okay, it's not common. Okay, what is your take on the recent video on the mRNA vaccine affecting our DNA and that vaccination stopped? Yeah, I know this video going around. There are lots of videos going on like this. Now, this is based on a particular study that was conducted and reported, I think, by one of the Scandinavian countries, whereby there is some evidence to show that the mRNA from the COVID vaccine, Pfizer in particular, have been reverse transcribed. Okay, in other words, it has entered into the DNA area in the nucleus. Now, so a lot of people sees, especially people who have vaccine hesitation, sees this as like, oh, it's bad, therefore it can affect the DNA. But we have to understand what this study actually says. Now, first of all, this study is done because COVID RNA itself enters our DNA. The motivation and the reason for this study on the mRNA vaccine is because some earlier studies, these are reported in 2021, shows that the RNA from the COVID virus enter our DNA and get reverse transcribed into our DNA. So then the researchers then question, now if the COVID RNA enters our DNA, can the vaccine do the same? That's what they are asking. So therefore, the reason for doing the test is because COVID virus itself does that already. Okay, yeah. But does it alter our DNA to cause cancer, to cause problem? To date, there is no evidence of that. Now, secondly, the study is done not on live people, but it's done on liver cells that is cancerous. So when we do cells, right, a cellular study, when we look at this, they are all cell biology. We want to do a study on cells. We can't use normal cells because the normal cells don't replicate fast enough, because our cells don't keep dividing all the time, because the cells that keep dividing all the time are cancer cells. So therefore, this test is done on cancerous liver cell, okay, which is obtained from Japan. And in this cancer liver cells done in the laboratory setting, there are some evidence to show that the mRNA from the vaccine itself also entered the DNA, much like the COVID RNA also entered the human cell. That's all it says. It doesn't say anything about causing mutation, causing all the rest. It doesn't say anything of those. And secondly, it's not done in human bodies, in normal human cells, but rather in cancerous liver cells that keep multiplying all the time. And this multiplication of the liver cells is not what happens in our natural body. So we have to just bear this in mind. Yeah? So let's not take maybe a bit sensationalized a video beyond what the data is saying. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about this, because all these are very, very complicated. I hope this will have answered part of the question. Now, next question: if infected with Omicron, what do we take? What do we do? Take orally if someone is breastfeeding. The zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D reduces. Okay, I think if you're infected with Omicron, you're breastfeeding, there is a risk of passing the infection to the child, not just through breastfeeding, just through the fact that you are interacting with the baby in close proximity at that time. Okay, I have no knowledge about zinc, vitamin D, and vitamin D3 effect on milk production. I think that this question you have to ask someone else. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. Okay, what are the medication we need if we are infected with COVID? Soon, in 2 weeks' time, we will get the anti-COVID, not vaccination, anti-COVID medication in Malaysia, Paxlovid. Okay, so at that time, we have the option of getting that medication, and that medication has been shown to reduce the severity of COVID by about between 50 to 80%. Okay, but at this moment, at the present moment, there is no antiviral that is easily obtainable from the pharmacy that you can take, or from the doctor that you can take. There are antiviral immunotherapy that's available in hospitals, but they are reserved for more severely affected people, not for the mildly affected home people. At home, I think you just take normal diet, lots of fresh air, eat healthily, drink lots of water, the normal things that you would do if you have something like flu. Okay. What about booster for 2 jabs AZ? Okay, for booster for 2 jabs AZ, you take Pfizer. The study has shown that if you have two AZ jab, you should take Pfizer as a booster, because that will boost your immunity to actually the highest, even higher than 3-dose Pfizer. 2-dose at the present moment, although it's good, it's not sufficient. You still can do better if you get a booster dose. And you should get Pfizer, and you are offered Pfizer. You can walk through, if you're 18 and above, you can walk through any vaccination center, I believe, and have your booster dose. 3AZ has the lowest protection compared to Pfizer and Sino. This I don't think is true. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, how will status of incomplete vaccination affect life after 31st? I think, okay, this is about, for those who you do not know, if you have Sinovac 2 doses, by 31st of March, and if you don't get a booster dose, your myosarcoma will turn into incomplete vaccination. And therefore, this will restrict your movement. Yeah, so it will affect your life, because your myosarcoma will then signal you as incomplete vaccination. And therefore, you will have restriction in terms of dining out, going shopping and things like that. Yeah, so it will affect you. So therefore, do get boosted. And so that's what I would say. Okay, to get boosted. Okay, if self-test kits are positive, do we need a PCR? If you are positive, you don't need PCR, because if you're positive, it's almost 100% certainty you're positive. It's only when you're negative, but you still think you're positive, that PCR may show that you're positive when the self-test kit doesn't show you positive. But if you are positive, if you test positive using self-test kit, it's almost certain you're positive. So that is enough. Okay. Okay. What are the things to do if on quarantine? Go to PJC online, watch the sermon. I don't know. Live life as normal. Enjoy yourself. Do as much as you can, but of course, important. Self-isolate from your loved ones at home. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, nowadays it's only 5 days, so it's not too bad. So when we came back from Vancouver recently, we also have to self-isolate at home 5 days, and 5 days go past very quickly. Okay. Just do something productive. or rest, just rest, just enjoy the time that you can have alone. Okay, what is casual contact? Now, casual contact is basically a contact with another person that's positive, but the contact time is not enough to render you high risk of getting infected. Okay, so this is quite hard to fully define. For example, if you wear masks and you meet another person with mask on, and the other person is positive, that will be classified as casual contact because you're not at high risk. Or if you eat in a restaurant, same restaurant, right? You're unmasked, but the guy is seated 2 tables away. My Sejatra detected that he's positive later, and then you're in the same restaurant, you will be classified as casual contact. So close contact is when you have family members, same household, being affected, or you have direct contact, unmasked, close proximity, direct social engagement, close proximity for more than 15 minutes, then you'll be classified as close contact. So it's quite loosely based, but if you're casual contact, life goes on as normal. You just have to be a bit more careful to detect any symptoms. Otherwise, you don't have to quarantine. Life can go on as normal, particularly if you are vaccinated and boosted. What is your take on the risks for children? We are seeing a sharp rise in the admission of kids in the hospital. Yeah, it's true. The amount of children that are being infected is getting higher and higher because schools are reopened, and also because the much smaller amount of children are vaccinated. So therefore, to reduce that risk, you should really consider vaccinating your children. Okay, I can't emphasize this enough. Children, even if they are infected, tend to be mild. The vast majority of children are being affected have mild diseases. So I think one good thing about that. But nevertheless, we do not want children to be infected, although it's mild, because a very small, but tiny proportion may get severe disease from it. I do not want parents to be overly worried about it. At the same time, I think as parents, we should take all the precautions, all the safe precautions we can take as much as possible to protect our children. We have to be sensible, and we have to look at risk, not in terms of just COVID alone, but also risk of other things like social development, isolation, mental health. So these are some of the things that we should consider. And lastly, another question of ivermectin. I said this, I think, in previous talks, and worldwide, the opinion is the same. Ivermectin doesn't work. There's no evidence that it does. The evidence that it does work is so flimsy. The biggest study that shows that the ivermectin works is based in Egypt, and the authors have retracted, not the authors have retracted, but rather the journal that published it has already taken out that journal because they found that the authors have fabricated the data. So there's no evidence that ivermectin works. It's now going out from the view already, much like hydroxychloroquine was before. It's not proven, so don't depend on it to help you with COVID. Okay, I think I've exhausted the questions. Any other ones? Any other questions?
If you have any questions, you can still choose to write it on Slido, on Zoom, on YouTube.
Okay, so if not, then I think we just draw this to a close. I think after 2 years, a lot of people are very knowledgeable already, but I just want to give this closing remarks. Okay, if you're not, okay, sorry, there's one. Noted some positive last more than 10 days, not 5 days. What is the reason? Okay, the test for the active virus RNA, okay, in you. Now, even inactivated virus particle will test positive. So therefore, even when you're over the infective period and you're no longer able to infect other people, if you scrub your nose, because your nose still have dead virus inside there, right? And then subject it to especially PCR testing, you may still test positive. So therefore, it can be positive. In fact, there are people who test positive in Hong Kong. I think there's a person who tests positive for 3 months, so he has to isolate for 3 months, which is a tragedy for him. But it's not because he's actively infected, it's because the viral particle is still there in his system and still being shed out, but he's not infective per se, okay? Now, the 5 days is a convenient time okay, it's not. It doesn't mean that at 5 days dot on the dot, then you suddenly magically become non-infective. So we are taking a 5-day period because that's a reasonable time. It doesn't mean that you can't be infectious after that, but as more days goes by, you become far more less infectious. But by 5 days, you're fairly safe. Okay, so therefore, it's taken as 5 days. And of course, if you wear masks, then of course you protect others, even if you're mildly infective after that time. Okay, I just want to give some closing remarks. First of all, I know a lot of you have vaccinated already. If you haven't, please get vaccinated. Please get vaccinated. If you're boosted, not boosted, please get boosted. Because the data from the whole world, every country in the world, including Malaysia, and Malaysia have got lots of data by now because we have vaccinated 80+% of the population. The vaccine is safe. There are some side effects, but they're mild. The vast majority are mild, and it's far better to meet those small risks than to meet with the risk of getting infected with COVID. By far, okay. Study shows conclusively, if you have booster dose, you are 40 to 70 times less likely to die from COVID infection, and that is a lot. And this comparing to people vaccinated, there's a lot. So get vaccinated and boosted. And secondly, we are moving towards endemic situation. Okay, so we are going there, and we need to transit there. Okay, and we do it slowly, okay, based on your comfort level, but we have to move there. So don't let too much fear hold you back as well, okay, because too much anxiety and fear driven by this fear is also not healthy for us long term, especially for children. So we have to move towards that, but we move towards that safely, okay, slowly, safely, but we will have to move towards that. So we have to also make decision to do that. So as parents, as members of your own family or whatever, your community, we have to make a conscious effort to slowly pivot ourselves from a pandemic hypervigilant situation to an endemic situation. And we will get there because as more and more people around us are getting infected by the milder version of COVID, because we have previous immunity, either from infection or from the high rate of vaccination, then more and more people will be developing this immunity around us. And eventually, as we can see in all the other countries that have been, who are slightly ahead of us, we will move out of this pandemic. Okay, and then I hope to see every single one of you in church worshiping with us, because the worship today is fantastic, and you're in physical on-site worship. So with that, I would like to thank you, Pastor Yu Yong, and also for to all of you for your kind attention.
Sorry, Elder, there's 2 more questions.
More question. Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's on the Slido. The last 2 questions, and then we'll close the Q&A.
Yeah, I've answered the positive one already. Ivermectin one I've done. So precaution when flying long hours. Oh yeah, okay. Both Hera and I flew long hours from here to Vancouver. In fact, the leg from Singapore to Vancouver took us 15 hours going there and almost 17 hours coming back. So what did we do? We wear masks. We do unmask to eat, so we try not to eat, take our leisure time to eat, you know. So if you can, if the flight allows you to eat at your leisure, some flights do that, right? Then you can choose to eat when other people have stopped eating, okay, to reduce your risk. Or you can just eat quickly and then mask up again, okay? It's possible. We travel on the flight and we felt pretty safe. It is possible. Yeah, so, but it's something you have to think about. But if you're flying a short flight, you know, like from here to Singapore, which is what most people do, or any flight less than 3 hours where you don't really need to drink or need to eat, just keep your mask on during the duration. I think that's also quite safe. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Yi Fong. Thank you, everyone, for making time to be equipped to learn about what is the update regarding the Omicron and the situation of COVID in the country and around the world. Just want to mention that we will not be releasing the notes. However, this has been recorded and it will be available on our YouTube page at PJEFC. So if you just head over to our YouTube page at YouTube/PJEFC, I think so, or you just go to Google, you type YouTube, you type PJEFC, you reach our YouTube page. The recording will be available there right after this talk. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Yi Fong, for sharing with us. Let us close with a word of prayer. Father Lord, it's been 2 years since we've been fighting COVID-19. Some of us are tired, some of us are weary, some of us still confused with the many information and misinformation that are out there. Father, in everything we do, Father, we ask, Lord, that you protect us, that, Lord, you keep us safe from the virus. Give us wisdom to make good decisions that can protect ourselves, protect our family, our children, our loved ones. So, Father, we look forward to the day where we can come together as your people to worship you physically, without fear of the virus, without fear of any other thing, Lord Father. So Lord, Father, we pray that the day will come soon. So Lord, we ask that, Lord, you continue to give us a good Sunday. May your protection, your favor be upon us as we depart from this place. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody. Have a good Sunday.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good Sunday. See you all soon.